I suppose now, after 10 years, I'm as much Irish as I am English.
Ireland are through to the quarterfinals of the World Cup, and a meeting with Italy or Uruguay in Rome on Saturday night. The most magnificent achievement in the history of Irish soccer. Ireland are there.
Jack, if I can start by asking you, when you took over the Republic of Ireland job, did you set out any particular aims for yourself and for the team?
Of course. I mean, when I first took the job, I knew that we couldn't play in European competition or in World Cups or in qualification games of any description and play the same way as they were playing in Europe. We had to change our game and the approach we had to the game, which I did. I mean, I think one of the things that people have talked to me about from abroad when I've met people that played us or played against us, and they've all said, you know, we didn't like the way you played because our players aren't used to you playing that way. Most of the teams in Europe, because I went out to Mexico for the World Cup and I watched the teams that we would be playing in the next qualification game for the European Championships, Belgium, and I went to see them twice. I learned a very great deal from the game I saw there. And one of them was to make Liam Brady close the people down in front of him quickly, not let the fullbacks have a look to see whether they were going to play the ball, because they had a big guy who played up front. What was his name? Coolemans. Big lad, Coolemans. Very good header of the ball, very big, strong man. And he, if you let the fullbacks deliver the ball into the 18-yard box, he would always be on the end of it, and he would change the direction of the ball, which would cause you many problems. And so I said to the players, the nearest person to their fullbacks, when they knock the ball to the fullbacks, because they deliberately played the ball from there, because fullbacks can drop off as far as they want to give themselves room and time to look and hit a long ball into the box. And I said, what you've got to do is you've got to stop the ball being served. So what you've got to do, the moment the ball gets played to the fullback, one of you, the nearest person, run straight at them. Don't stop, just run straight at and make them go in a different direction, so that they maybe have to play the ball inside or have to beat you.
Was there any way of doing that without necessarily sacrificing the creative talents, which was one of the criticisms that was levelled at you of the likes of Liam Brady, for example?
That's right. Well, no, Liam, I'll come to that, but it was part of the job that Liam didn't want to do. He played for us in midfield, and I wanted Liam not to come and take the ball off the back four. I wanted Liam to take the ball off the front four, or the front two. And because I'd played against Arsenal with Sheffield Wednesday when I was manager there 5 times in an FA Cup. We played them 5 times in the semi-final of an FA Cup, and we got beat through Liam. And it was always because Liam, when he was up front, is one of the best passers of the ball you ever saw. He slides balls into people. He can always, he'll finish things off. He'll have goalkeepers off the line. When he played against Brazil, do you remember we beat Brazil 1-0 here in a friendly match? Not many people beat Brazil, but we did. And it was mainly because of Liam, and he scored a fantastic goal. But it was just because he was up front, off the back four, off the front two. And I wanted him to play that way. We could play whoever he wanted across midfield, but Liam had to have the freedom to perform the way he was capable of performing. That was my opinion. And I remember in a game, a ball got played to a fullback, and he ran about 20 yards because he was the nearest person to him, and he ran about 20 yards, and he blocked the ball as the guy went to hit it. And I stood up and I shouted at him, "That's what I want. That's what I want you all to do. You must not let the fullbacks have the ball and serve it." And they didn't.
There was a very muted minority of the media that might have been somewhat critical of that style. I'm thinking Eamon Dunphy in particular.
Oh, Eamon Dunphy would be critical of anybody's style if you didn't agree with him. I mean, what did he ever produce? I don't like people like him. You know, if you said black, he'd say white. If you said white, he'd say black. You can't argue with people like that. And anyway, he's in non-event as far as I'm concerned. You might like him over here, but I don't like him in England, and he doesn't appear very much in England.
He's back in the media today, back in the news today, or the last week or two, along with John Giles and Brady himself. Brian Kerr had a pop at those three in particular for what he seemed to see were destructive comments in the media. Did you ever find that with high-profile people like that and big football men? Maybe you don't have respect for Eamon Dunphy, but the likes of John Giles and Liam Brady, who would command respect, do you think did you ever find people like that are deliberately destructive?
Liam got used to what I wanted him to do, and then, I mean, we qualified here. We had qualified, and we beat Romania 2-0, I think was here, and Liam got sent off the field, which meant that we qualified to play in, I think it was Germany, and Liam was sent off for a tackle on a guy. Which meant that he missed the first 3 games of the competition. Strangely enough, he went and did his ankle, and he did his knee, and he didn't go with us anyway. But he wouldn't have gone and played in the opening 3 games, which was just a moments of madness for him, because but Liam was I always loved Liam Brady as a player. He's a tremendous player, but I wanted him to do it in the right areas, the ones that I wanted. And we had the differences, but he finally came around to it.
Was Germany, maybe because it was the first one, was that the sweetest one out of the most enjoyable tournament for you as a manager?
Well, it showed that we could compete at that level. That was the thing that came out of it. You know, we weren't afraid of anybody, and we could compete at that level, and we could beat people at that level. And then when we qualified to play in Italy, it was we weren't afraid of anybody. We had good players, we had a good team, we had a good method of playing. We upset people in the way we played because they didn't want us to, what you call, apply pressure. Because when I get accused of being a long ball man, I'm not a long ball man. I only wanted the ball played like if Niall Quinn went away to the left-hand side, if he didn't join in the build-up, he would take people away. Because you can't have a fella with a header like Tony Cascarino or Niall Quinn. You can't have people like that in positions marked by only one little fullback. You must have somebody else there as well. So that'd give you a little bit more time and a little bit more room to build it down the side you wanted. We always played the ball in behind the fullback, so that John Aldridge could get to the ball first. Ray Houghton would always go down the line and have the ball played to him. If Ray couldn't cross the ball in, then he would knock the ball back to whoever was playing at fullback, and then they would deliver the balls in.
How difficult was it for you, as 1990, for example, the World Cup was unfolding, to shield the players from what was going on around? Were the hotels besieged by fans and all that sort of thing? Was it difficult to keep the players focused on what was going on the pitch?
No. The fans were always very good. They'd come in, the bar would be full, but the players weren't allowed in the bar. I mean, they could only go in the bar if they had relatives in or somebody like that, and had to go and talk to them in the lounge. But they had to get permission before they went out, and they weren't allowed out of the hotel. I mean, everybody thinks that we were lapsadaisical and like we wouldn't let them out of the hotel. Then if we did let them out, they would know exactly when they had to be back, and they knew they knew the rules very, very well, and they stuck with them.
There's been suggestions recently that the bond that was formed between the Irish national team back then in the late 80s and early 90s is different to what it is now. There have been some pieces that have come out recently and says that with all the Celtic Tiger and everything that's happened in Ireland, that we've actually changed as a people, and we're more selfish maybe, and a bit more mean and a bit more greedy, and we don't necessarily... The suggestion is that we'll never have the same joy that we did in those years, no matter what happens.
Well, obviously not, because, I mean, it's one of those things that you had never done before, and suddenly you achieve it and you're a part of it. It's new. It's something different. We've never done it before, and then suddenly you've done it. 2 World Cups and a European Championship, and we got to a playoff against Holland for the last one. These were they were sort of... People were getting to accept that that's what we would do. The longer I was in the job, the more difficult it was, for a simple way that we had to change the game a little bit in some of the years, because we had different players coming in. But not only that, the people abroad knew how you played now. I mean, if somebody was coming to play us, they might send somebody, we'll go back and say, they kick the ball in behind the fullback, and maybe it's okay, we can handle that. And then suddenly you find that they're not really handling it at all.
I want to ask you a bit about Roy Keane, Jack, because Roy, in his autobiography, talks about the time during the '94 World Cup where there was the training ground bust-up and he was brought out. You brought him out along with Maurice Setters to explain that there had been no problem in the camp. He wasn't particularly happy with having to do that, or he says now that he wasn't particularly happy with having to do that. How did you find Roy to deal with during that World Cup and in the subsequent...
That was the only time I've ever had any need for I was away doing something. I wasn't at the training ground, and I'd left Morris in charge. And but I'd said to Roy Keane, don't train, just go and do a few exercises with Mick, because he had a bit of a knock on something. I said, have a bath and, just settle down, don't worry. And then the next thing I knew, next thing Morris knew was he was playing in the game. We had a 7-a-side and he was playing. And Roy said, no. And Morris said, no, you're not, you've got a knock, you're playing in a game, come off, leave it. And he brought him off the park. Roy wasn't happy because he was quite happy, he wanted to play. But looking at it from a managerial point of view and in Morris's point of view, I'd already said that what he was to do, and he didn't do it, he wanted to play. We brought him off. And then there was a lot of press in Ireland, which we got back to America. A lot of the details, people were phoning up to say what was in the papers to the players, and the players were coming to me and saying, apparently with this Morris bringing this Roy Keane over, that everything's up the wall and that. I said, no, it's not at all. I said, Roy knew he was doing what he shouldn't have been doing, because I had said him not to do it. And he was doing it. And Morris interpreted what I had said to him and got him off and made him go and relax. So when I went and got Roy, and we had a press conference the following day, and I went and got Roy, and I took him into the press conference, and I said, now, from what I gather from Ireland, we've had a lot of feedback here that you are on about Morris Setters and Roy having an argument and nearly a fight. And I said to Morris, what do you say? Morris said, well, no, I only did what you were brought him off, boss. And I said to Roy, well, did you ever go at Morris? He went, no, he made me come off the field and I wasn't very happy, but I came off. And it was okay, there was nothing wrong. And they were trying to dig holes in a situation. They were trying to make insinuations that were just not there, because I had instructed that Roy should stay off the field. Morris did exactly what I told him he should do.
There was another Keane, Robbie Keane. There was criticism of Robbie and a few of the other players recently for going out 5 nights before the France game when they went out on the town. Now, I want to get your thoughts on this, because times certainly seem to have changed over the last 10 or 15 years as regards player preparation and the rest of that. Back in your time, there was that famous Harry Ramsden's challenge, which has been talked about many times, and it seemed as though there was no major problem with players, what players did a couple of days before a game. Maybe these days people are talking about 5 days before a game, there's no way that a player should be going out. But I assume that wasn't really thought about back then.
No, I couldn't understand what they were talking about, because we were coming back from... We'd been to Limerick to play, to train and to spend a bit of time over, and we trained and did do work over there. And then we got on the bus the day before the game, and we came back into Dublin. And when we were coming in, I said to the lads, do you want some fish and chips? Because I was at Harry Ramsden's the other night, and it was brilliant. And it was more of food than anything else. And I said, and they all went, yeah, we'll do, So we stopped for fish and chips. What's wrong? Stopping for fish and chips the day before the game.
Well, there was a suggestion that there was sort of an all-you-can-eat sort of a thing going on.
Not at all. You get a plate full of fish and chips, and you eat the fish and chips if you want them. Nobody had any soup to start with. Nobody had any puddings to finish with. They had fish and chips. And I like fish and chips. And the players liked the fish and chips. And probably one or two of them, I think it was because the following day we lost the game. No, you can't blame fish and chips for losing a game.
No.
Can you?
Do you think that the journalists and people, and maybe the public in general, do get on players' backs a bit too much for what they do before games. For example, that story about a few of the players this time going out for a few drinks 5 days before a game. Would you see any problem with that, for example?
Not at all. Not at all. We used to go out. I was brought up at Leeds United where the rules were laid down. Like the boss, Don Revy, used to call me and Billy in. And he'd call us into his office on a Friday morning. And he'd say, I've got a phone call today. You two were out in the pub last night. And I said, yeah, we were. And Billy said, yeah, we were. And he said, but we weren't drinking. He said, we only go in on a Thursday night because it's a domino night and we play dominoes. And I said, and we might have a pint of shandy or something like that. I said, but we don't drink. We don't drink. We just go in for the dominoes. It's domino night. And me and Billy only lived about a quarter of a mile away from each other. And but people would phone in and say that Billy and Jack Charlton were in this pub and they were drunk as newts, you know. And they always emphasise things which are not true. And I said to Don, well, we rather than sitting in drinking orange juice and that, we just like to go out on a Thursday night because it's a dead night really when you're a player, because you may be leaving on the Friday to go and play at Arsenal or Highbury, but you don't leave till the Friday, and you might not be playing until the Saturday, and you might have played on a Wednesday night to start with. And Don used to say to us, yeah, okay, and he let us do it. Now, when we used to go to the pictures here, and I've told this loads of times, you know, the lads, we always went to the pictures on a Monday. And we go to the picture that some of the lads would go to that picture house and some would go to that picture house. And then we would meet on the bus and all come back. Now, I used to send Morris or one of the staff went with that group if they went to a picture house, and we went with this group. But we always, on the way back, the lads would start to sing, we love you, Jackie, we do. Which meant, can we stop for a pint? Now, I'm from a very famous footballing family called the Milburns. Jack, George, Jimmy and Stan Milburn all played professional football. Jackie Milburn, everybody knows, played for Newcastle. And George used to say to me, and Jack, never drink bottled beer. Only have draft beer, he says, and it's the best thing in the world for you because it's full of protein.
Right.
Now, when you're a player, you can drink as much orange juice and as much lemonade and as much crap as you want, and you can get away, and it's acceptable. But to have a pint of Guinness... Now, I used to say to Don, when we went to London, I said to the boss, when we have dinner on a Friday night, I said, can I not have a beer? I said, because I hate drinking orange juice and lemonade and that. I said, can I have a beer? And he said, yeah, if you want a beer, have a beer. That was the night before a game.
Yeah.
Now, everybody that looks into you and sees you doing things don't really understand. I mean, the lads wanted it was good for the lads. And we used to go stop at Hill 16. And we go into Hill 16, you could have one drink, that was it. No more. You get one drink and then you're back to the hotel and you're off to bed.
Jack, just lastly, I want to ask you about Brian Kerr and his the fact that he wasn't given a new contract. Do you think he was given enough time in the job?
Sometimes you're lucky as a manager, sometimes you're unlucky as a manager. And I felt that in 2 games that looked like we were going to win. That was 2-0 against Israel at Lansdowne Road, and then winning 1-0 with a minute or 2 to go in Israel. And unfortunately, they got a goal and equalised on 2 occasions, and we dropped 4 points there. Had we taken just 1 point out of each, 3 points out of each within 2 games, we would have qualified. But it didn't happen. And then when you lose players like Roy Keane and Damien Duff, and when you really, they are the people that will score you a goal if it's necessary, particularly Damien Duff, who will take the ball at people, and he's a very, very difficult player now. You can't mark people you can't put extra people on him because you take things away from other positions. And now, it was just unfortunate that we lost him. And Roy Keane obviously missing the games because of an injury as well. Of the 2 players that you would have wanted to play in those 2 games, they were the 2. They were definitely the 2 that you wanted to play in those games. And if they'd have played, he would have got results, and he would have still been in the job, and everybody would have been patting him on the back and saying how good you are. But he's looked just run away from him, and he just lost things at the wrong time. The only thing I felt I disagreed with him with was when he started to change the players in Israel, because I would never change a player unless he was injured. If the game was ours, if we were winning the game and everything was okay, leave it alone. Because if you change it, you change the structure, you change the players coming on, they've got to get warmed up, they've got to get part of into the game again. They don't have very long in 10 minutes or 20 minutes. So I would leave it alone. But that's the only thing I could criticise him for. I mean, other than that, the lads have worked hard, they've performed well. They certainly can't condemn them, the players, for the lack of effort.
Okay, Jack Charlton, we're just about out of time, but it's been a pleasure talking to you, and thanks for taking your time out today to talk to us.